The sun was setting on the dusty trade station at the edge of the galaxy. Merchants closed their stalls, engines of cargo ships roared in the distance, and the air smelled of burned metal and old food. A lone human traveler named Daniel sat on a bench near the docking bay, holding a small box of warm rations. He was tired from a long day of repair work, his clothes dusty, his hands scratched, but his stomach growled louder than his complaints. He opened the box and began to eat slowly, enjoying the rare taste of something fresh. Then he heard it. A whisper so soft that he almost thought it was the wind. "Can we have your leftovers?" Daniel froze, his fork still in the air. He turned his head and saw two small figures standing behind him, half hidden in the shadows. They were alien girls, no older than 10 by human guess, their skin a pale silver blue, their eyes large and glowing faintly in the dark. Their clothes were torn, thin rags barely covering their small bodies. One of them looked at the ground, ashamed, while the other clutched her sister's hand tightly. They both looked hungry, their faces thin, their lips dry, their bodies trembling from cold and fear. Daniel blinked, unsure if he had heard them right. The smaller girl repeated, her voice shaking, "Your leftovers, please." The words were broken, like she had learned human speech only recently, but the meaning was clear. They were begging for scraps of human food. On a galactic station where trade ships carried mountains of supplies, two children were starving. For a moment, Daniel just sat in silence. He had seen poverty before, on Earth and on colonies, but this felt different. This was the galaxy, the place people dreamed of. Yet here were two alien girls looking at his half-eaten meal as if it were treasure. His first thought was simple, just give them the food, but another thought quickly. I followed. Why were they here? Why were they so desperate? Why did they ask him, a stranger? He placed the box down carefully. "Come closer," he said gently. The girls hesitated, fear flashing in their eyes. They looked around nervously as if someone might be watching. Then slowly, they stepped closer. Daniel pushed the box toward them. "Here, take it," he said. The older one shook her head, whispering, We cannot. It is wrong. The law forbids. But we are so hungry." Daniel frowned. The law? What law could forbid children from eating food? The younger one glanced around again, then snatched a small piece of bread from the box and shoved it into her mouth. Tears filled her eyes as she chewed, like she had not tasted food in days. The older sister quickly followed, her hands trembling as she picked up a small piece of meat. They ate with quiet desperation, as if each bite might be taken away. Daniel felt something twist inside his chest. Pity, anger, confusion. All at once, these were children, not criminals. Yet they were acting like thieves hiding from soldiers. "What do you mean the law forbids?" he asked softly. The older girl shook her head again. "We cannot say. They will punish. Please, just forget us." Her words only made Daniel more curious. Punish children for asking for food. It made no sense. But before he could ask more, the younger girl tugged at her sister's hand, whispering in their own language. They looked ready to run. Daniel quickly raised a hand. "Wait, you don't have to go. I won't hurt you. I just want to understand." The girls exchanged a glance, then stepped back into the shadows, their glowing eyes fixed on him. The older one said softly, "Thank you, human. You gave us life tonight. But be careful. Kindness is dangerous here." And then, before Daniel could reply, they slipped away into the crowd, moving fast, vanishing between the towering cargo crates. Daniel sat frozen, his food box now empty, his mind full of questions. What kind of place was this where kindness was dangerous? Why were innocent children living in fear of asking for food? He had come to this station for work and rest, nothing more, but in a single moment, two starving alien girls had changed everything. He leaned back, staring at the glowing stars outside the docking bay. Something deep inside told him this was not over. Those children would come back, and when they did, he would be waiting, not just with food, but with answers. The station lights flickered, the night patrol drones hummed overhead, but Daniel felt a spark in his chest, a spark of defiance. He did not know it yet, but this small act of giving leftovers was about to pull him into a storm far greater than he imagined, because in a galaxy ruled by strict laws and cold order, a single act of human compassion could shake everything. Daniel could not sleep that night. The image of the two alien girls haunted his thoughts, their glowing eyes filled with hunger and fear. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the younger one clutching the piece of bread like it was the most precious thing in the universe. And he heard their warning echo in his mind. Kindness is dangerous here. The words would not leave him. Why should kindness be dangerous? Why should giving food be treated like a crime? He lay awake on the small bunk in his rented cabin, listening to the hum of the station's power grid, his chest heavy with questions. The next day, he returned to the same docking bay. He sat on the same bench, eating slowly again, pretending to be relaxed, but his eyes scanned the shadows, searching. And then, just as he hoped, they came. The two alien girls crept from behind a line of cargo crates, their steps light, their bodies tense. They looked around nervously before moving closer. The older HFY. He whispered, "You should not be here, human. They watch, they listen." Daniel smiled gently. "I was hoping to see you again. I brought food." He opened a small pack from his bag and placed it on the ground. The younger one gasped, her eyes shining with hunger. But the older girl grabbed her sister's arm, holding her back. Her voice was sharp with fear. "Stop! We cannot take more. If they find out, they will hurt us. They will hurt you too." Daniel leaned closer, lowering his voice. "Who are they?" The older girl's lips pressed tight, but her trembling gave away her fear. After a moment, she whispered, "The overseers, the guards of the law. They forbid food from outsiders. No species may feed another, it is written." Daniel frowned deeply. "Why? Why would they forbid food?" The girl shook her head. "They say every race must survive on its own. No help, no sharing. It is balance. But we are hungry. Our fields are dry. Our people are weak. And the overseers do not care." Her voice broke at the last words. The younger one pulled at her arm again, whispering in their alien tongue, desperate and small. Daniel could not understand the words, but he understood the tone. She was begging to eat. Slowly, Daniel pushed the food toward them again. "You can eat. I won't tell anyone." The older one hesitated, her eyes darting toward the surveillance drones flying lazily above the docks. Then finally she let go. The younger girl rushed forward, tearing into the pack like a starved animal. Her sister followed, slower, but once she tasted a bite, tears filled her eyes. They both ate silently, quickly, like each second was stolen from danger. Daniel watched them, his heart heavy. This was no ordinary hunger. This was survival. These were children who had learned to fear kindness, who had learned to hide their pain. When the food was gone, the older one looked at Daniel, her glowing eyes wet with tears. "You must stop, human. If the overseers find out, they will punish you. They punish anyone who breaks the law, even children." Her voice shook as she said it. Daniel clenched his fists, anger burning in his chest. "Punish children for being hungry? That's not law. That's cruelty," he muttered. The girls lowered their heads. The younger whispered, "It is all we know." Daniel leaned closer. "Then tell me where you live. Let me see. Maybe I can help." The older girl pulled her sister close, shaking her head violently. "No, no, it is forbidden. If you come, you will be seen. They will know." But Daniel's resolve hardened. He could not walk away, not after seeing the desperation in their eyes. He placed a gentle hand over his chest. "Listen, I am not afraid. I want to help. Please, trust me." The girls looked at each other for a long moment, silent words passing between them. Finally, the older one sighed, her shoulders dropping in defeat. "Follow us, but stay hidden. If they see you, we are all lost." They led him away from the bright trade halls, down narrow passages where the air smelled of rust and decay. The walls grew darker, colder, and fewer people walked these halls. The neon signs and holograms of the upper levels were gone, replaced by flickering lamps and leaking pipes. Daniel realized they were heading into the underbelly of the station, a place built not for trade, but for those who had nothing. When they reached a broken hatch, the girl slipped inside quickly, motioning for him to follow. Daniel crouched low and entered. The space was dim, crowded with makeshift shelters built from old crates and broken panels. He froze, his breath catching in his throat. Children, dozens of them, all alien, sat quietly on the ground, their eyes hollow, their bodies thin, their faces pale. Some coughed weakly, others simply lay still, too tired to move. Mothers sat nearby, trying to comfort them, though they looked just as starved. The air smelled of sickness and damp metal. Daniel's chest tightened. He had never seen so much hidden suffering in one place. It was like a secret world buried under the shining surface of the station, a world where no one cared if children lived or died. The two girls guided him to a corner where an older woman lay on a thin mat, her face sunken, her breathing shallow. She looked at Daniel with weak, tired eyes. "You are the human who gave my daughters food," she whispered, her voice faint but steady. Daniel nodded. "Yes, and I'll give more. I'll help." The woman shook her head slowly. "You should not. Kindness is dangerous, but thank you. You gave them hope." Her words pierced his heart like a blade. He looked at the starving faces around him, at the hollow eyes of children who had never known safety. He knew then that he could not turn away, no matter the law, no matter the danger. As he left the hidden shelter, Daniel felt a storm rising inside him. He had come to the station as a traveler, a worker, nothing more. But now he carried something heavier than he had ever known, the weight of hidden hunger, and a promise forming in his heart. He would not let these children starve, not while he was alive. Daniel could not erase the images from his mind, the hollow eyes of starving children, the weak voices of mothers too tired to cry, the hidden shelter deep under the station. He had seen poverty before, but nothing like this. This was not just hunger, this was silence, enforced silence. The next day, Daniel followed the alien girls again, this time with careful steps and sharper eyes. He noticed something he had missed before. No one in the main halls looked at the girls. People saw them, but quickly turned away. Merchants, workers, even guards acted as if the children were invisible. It was as if the colony of starving aliens did not exist. Daniel sat at a corner stall pretending to sip a cheap drink, his gaze sweeping across the docking bay. He watched the girls move between shadows, never standing still, never speaking loudly. He realized they had learned to survive by being unseen. They lived in a world where asking for help was forbidden, where even their existence was a secret. Later, when the girls led him back to the hidden shelter, Daniel saw more than before. He noticed how the walls were covered with makeshift curtains, how the children's laughter was almost silent whispers. They had been trained not to make noise, not to draw attention. This was a colony of silence, the silent colony. The older girl, whose name Daniel finally learned was Sarah, explained in hushed words. Our people once had farms, green worlds with food, but war and disease destroyed much. Now we live here, forgotten. Her sister Lyra clung to her arm, nodding with wide eyes. Sarah added, the overseers say it is not allowed to take food from outsiders. They say it makes us weak, that it breaks the balance. Daniel clenched his jaw. Balance, they called it, but he saw only cruelty. Balance meant watching children starve in silence, while food traded in mountains only a level above. He looked around the shelter, noticing mothers exchanging scraps of dry roots, children licking empty bowls just to taste something. The silence here was not peace, it was despair. That night, Daniel could not rest again. He lay awake staring at the metal ceiling of his cabin. The words echoed in his head. Kindness is dangerous. Balance must be kept. But why should balance matter more than life? He began to understand. The law was not about survival, it was about control. If people from different species helped each other, the overseers would lose their power. The next day, Daniel decided to test something. He bought extra food from a merc, hunt, and placed it in his bag. He walked toward the lower levels where Sarah and Lyra usually waited. When he met them, he handed the pack to Sarah. She shook her head quickly, fear flashing in her glowing eyes. No, human, too much. They will notice. We must be quiet. Quiet? Daniel asked, his voice low but firm. You mean silent? You mean pretend like nothing is wrong? Sarah lowered her gaze, whispering, if we make noise, if we beg too loudly, overseers come. They take people away. Sometimes they never return. Lyra hugged her sister tighter, her small voice trembling. They make people disappear. Daniel felt cold spread through him. Disappear. That word was heavier than hunger. It meant punishment worse than starvation. He finally saw the full truth. This was not just a silent colony by choice. It was forced silence. Silence created by fear. He crouched down to Sarah's eye level. You cannot keep silent forever, he said softly. Sarah's lips pressed tight. We must, or we die. As they spoke, Daniel noticed movement near the shadows. A tall figure in dark armor, an overseer, watching silently. His chest tightened. The man's glowing visor turned in their direction. Daniel quickly stood, pretending to stretch, while Sarah pulled Lyra behind a crate. The overseer paused, then walked away, heavy boots echoing on the metal floor. Daniel's heart pounded. He had almost been caught. He realized then how dangerous even standing with the girls could be. One wrong move and the overseers would take him too, but the thought did not scare him away. It made him angrier, more determined. He could not stand by and let children waste away in silence. He would not let the overseers hide this suffering. Later, Sarah led him deeper into the hidden tunnels. There he saw walls covered with symbols scratched in the metal, marks left by desperate families, prayers, warnings. Names of those who had vanished. It was a graveyard of words, carved by those who had been silenced. Lyra pointed to one mark and whispered, "That was our father's name. He was taken when we begged too loudly." Daniel's throat tightened. The silent colony was not just starving, it was haunted by loss. Every mark on the wall was a reminder of what kindness cost, and yet, he thought, kindness was the only thing that could break this silence. As he left the tunnels that night, Daniel made a choice. He would not be another bystander who turned his eyes away. He would feed them, protect them, even if it broke the law. He knew the overseers would not forgive, but he also knew the children could not survive on silence. The station lights flickered above as he walked back toward his cabin. The trade halls bustled with life, merchants shouting, travelers laughing, food piled high on every stall, and beneath it all, hidden away, was a silent world of hunger. Daniel clenched his fists and whispered to himself, "This ends with me. I won't let their silence go on." He did not know how. He did not know what price he would pay. But in that moment, Daniel became something more than a traveler. He became a spark in the silent colony, a spark that could turn into fire. Daniel sat alone in his cabin, staring at the bag of food on his table. He had bought it earlier, but he had not eaten a single bite. His stomach growled, yet his thoughts were only on Sarah, Lyra, and the silent colony beneath the station. He knew they needed this food far more than he did. But with every passing hour, the overseers grew more watchful, their patrols heavier, their eyes sharper. The warning Sarah gave him echoed in his mind. "If they find out, they will punish you, punish us. They will make us disappear." Daniel's chest tightened as he remembered the fear in her voice. He could walk away, pretend he never saw the starving children, never heard their pleas. That would be the safer choice, the smart was, or choice, but not the human choice. Something deep inside told him that turning away now would mean losing himself. The next evening, Daniel took the bag of food and moved quietly into the tunnels. He followed the secret paths he had learned from Sarah and Lyra. The air grew colder, the lights dimmer, until finally he reached the shelter. When he entered, dozens of thin faces lifted to look at him, their glowing eyes filled with a mix of hope and fear. Sarah rushed forward, whispering harshly, "Why are you here again, human? We told you to stop." Daniel crouched, placing the bag gently on the floor. "I can't stop," he said softly. "Not while you're starving." Lyra's eyes lit up, and she grabbed her sister's arm, whispering excitedly. Sarah bit her lip, torn between hunger and fear. Then, finally, she allowed Daniel to open the bag. The children gathered silent and careful, but their trembling hands reached for the food. Mothers wept quietly as they shared pieces with the youngest first. Daniel watched as a weak child smiled for the first time, crumbs of bread sticking to her lips. It was the smallest victory, but to Daniel it felt like the greatest. Then the silence was broken. The faint whirring sound of patrol drones passing nearby. Everyone froze, their bodies stiff with terror. Daniel's heart raced. If the drones detected human food here, the overseers would storm the shelter. He quickly motioned for the food to be hidden. The children obeyed, stuffing it under rags and crates. The whirring sound grew louder, then slowly faded. Only then did they breathe again. Sarah glared at Daniel, her voice low and sharp. "You see? This is why it is too dangerous. One more mistake and they will take us. Take you." Daniel met her gaze, his voice steady. "If I stop, you die. Is that better?" Her lips trembled, her eyes filling with tears. Finally, she whispered, "No, but I am afraid." That night, Sarah introduced Daniel to her mother, the frail woman lying on a thin mat at the edge of the shelter. Her face was pale, her breathing shallow, but her eyes still held strength. "You are the human who feeds my daughters," she said weakly. Daniel nodded. "Yes, but I want to do more." The woman smiled faintly, though her lips were cracked. "You already risk too much. Kindness here is like fire. It gives warmth, but it burns all who touch it." Daniel lowered his head, conflicted. The mother's words were true, but he could not ignore the cries of hungry children. He clenched his fists, whispering to himself, "If fire is dangerous, then maybe it is what we need." The following days, Daniel continued to sneak food into the silent colony. Each time, the risks grew higher. The overseers began questioning merchants, searching bags, tightening security. Rumors spread in the upper halls, whispers of someone breaking the law by feeding the forgotten. The word traitor was whispered as well. Daniel realized the danger was no longer just for him. It was spreading to the children too. One evening, as Daniel walked through the dim tunnels with another bag of food, he heard the heavy steps of armored boots behind him. His breath caught. He ducked into a shadow, pressing against the cold wall. Two overseers marched past, their glowing visors scanning the corridor. Daniel held his breath, his heart pounding like a drum. One of the overseers paused, tilting his head as if sensing something, but after a moment they moved on, their steps fading into the distance. Daniel exhaled slowly, sweat dripping down his neck. That was too close, far too close. He realized he was no longer making small choices. He was standing at the edge of a line between obedience and defiance, between silence and resistance. That night, after delivering the food, Sarah's mother reached for his hand. Her grip was weak, but her eyes burned with quiet fire. "Human," she whispered, "you are kind, but kindness will destroy you. And when they destroy you, they will destroy us too, do you understand? Daniel nodded, but his heart whispered something else. Sometimes destruction was the only way to create change. As he left the shelter, he stopped at the tunnel entrance and looked back. The children were sleeping, their thin bodies huddled close for warmth. Sarah sat awake, watching him with worried eyes. Lyra slept with a faint smile on her lips, her small hand clutching a piece of bread as if afraid it would vanish. Daniel turned away, his mind made up. He could not stop, no matter the risk. He would feed them again and again until the overseers noticed. And when they did, he would face them, because sometimes the most dangerous choice was the only human choice. The station was no longer the same for Daniel. Every corridor felt narrower, every drone buzzed louder, every armored step of the overseers echoed heavier in his ears. His small acts of kindness had not gone unnoticed. Whispers spread like fire through the upper halls. Someone was breaking the law. Someone was feeding the silent colony. Merchants muttered behind their stalls. Dangerous, they said. Stupid, others hissed. Some even spat the word traitor. Daniel kept his head low, but he knew eyes followed him now. The overseers had begun their hunt. That evening, when he slipped into the hidden tunnels, Sarah rushed to him with panic in her glowing eyes. You should not be here, she whispered harshly. They are searching for you. They say a human is giving food to us. Daniel placed a steady hand on her shoulder. Then it is too late to stop. They already know. Lyra clung to his leg, her small voice trembling. They will take you away, like they took father. Daniel's chest tightened. The little girl's words cut deeper than any blade, but he only knelt and brushed her silver blue hair gently. I'm not leaving you hungry, no matter what they say. That night, when he delivered food to the starving children, he noticed something different. The colony was no longer only afraid, they were beginning to hope. Mothers whispered blessings under their breath. Children smiled faintly through weak lips, and Sarah's eyes, though still full of fear, carried a spark of something new. Daniel realized his small rebellion was more than food. It was becoming a symbol, a reminder that the overseer's law could be broken, but symbols were dangerous, and the overseers hated danger. The next day, the station's loudspeakers crackled to life. A cold mechanical voice rang out through every corridor. Attention citizens, an unknown criminal is providing illegal aid to starving outsiders. Such actions violate Galactic Law. Article 77. Any who assist or conceal this traitor will be punished. Report suspicious activity immediately. The words echoed like thunder. Children in the hidden colony clutched each other. Mothers wept silently. Daniel felt the weight of the announcement. The overseers were not just hunting him, they were hunting hope itself. Later, while walking back to his cabin, two overseers stopped him. Their glowing visors scanned his bag, their voices cold and sharp. What is your purpose here, human? Show us your goods. Daniel's heart pounded. He opened the bag slowly, revealing nothing but tools and scrap metal he had bought earlier to cover his trail. The overseers stared for a long moment, then moved on, but their presence clung to him like a shadow. When Daniel returned to the shelter that night, Sarah's mother spoke in a weak but steady tone. You must stop now, human. The law will not forgive. They will break you. And when they do, we will lose even the small hope you gave us. Daniel shook his head, his voice firm. No, if I stop, then they win. They want silence, and I cannot be silent. Sarah stared at him, her eyes wet with tears. You don't understand, human. The law does not bend. It only crushes. It will crush you. Daniel met her gaze, his own eyes burning with fire. Then let it crush me, but I will not let it crush you. The words hung heavy in the air. The children around them listened, their glowing eyes wide. For the first time, someone was speaking openly against the overseer's rule. For the first time, silence was breaking. The following days grew more dangerous. Overseers doubled their patrols, drones scanned tighter, and every whisper in the trade halls carried suspicion. Daniel noticed people turning their backs when he passed, merchants refusing to sell him food. The system itself was closing around him like a tightening fist. But still he returned to the silent colony. Each visit became a risk greater than the last. Each bag of food felt heavier, not because of its weight, but because of the punishment that loomed above it. One night, as he handed bread to Lyra, the tunnel shook with a sudden metallic thud, the air filled with the mechanical hum of drones, their red lights flashing through the cracks of the shelter walls. The overseers had come. Panic erupted in the silent colony. Children cried. Mothers clutched them close. Sarah's eyes filled with terror. Daniel stood, his fists clenched, his breath steady. This was the moment he had feared. The law had found him. The heavy steps grew louder, armored boots echoing through the tunnel. The overseer's cold voices shouted, "Open this place, traitors, lawbreakers, you will face judgment." Daniel turned to Sarah and Lyra, his voice calm but urgent. Hide the food, hide yourselves, don't come out no matter what happens. Sarah grabbed his arm, her voice breaking. No, don't face them. They will take you. They will kill you. Daniel knelt, looking into her eyes. Sometimes we have to stand, even when we are afraid, he whispered. Lyra sobbed, clinging to him. He gently pushed them toward the back of the shelter, his heart breaking, but his resolve firm. As the overseers broke through the hatch, Daniel stepped forward into the dim light. In his hands, he carried not a weapon, but the empty bag he had used to bring food. He lifted it high, his voice echoing through the tunnels. If feeding starving children is a crime, then yes, I am guilty. The overseers froze for a moment, their glowing visors scanning him. Then one of them growled, Human, by order of Galactic Law, you are under arrest. Chains clamped around his wrists, cold and heavy. Daniel did not resist. His eyes looked back one last time, meeting Sarah's tear-filled gaze. He gave her the smallest nod, a promise without words, and then he was dragged away. The law would not forgive, but Daniel did not need forgiveness. He needed the children to remember that someone, even for a short time, had chosen kindness over fear. The chains around Daniel's wrists were heavy, but not heavier than the silence in the tunnels. The overseers dragged him through the corridors, their glowing visors cold and unblinking. Behind him, the silent colony trembled. Children pressed close to their mothers, Sarah clutching Lyra as tears streamed down her face. Daniel did not resist, but his heart burned like fire. They pushed him into the central plaza of the station, a place filled with merchants, travelers, and workers from every corner of the galaxy. Crowds gathered quickly, whispers rising like smoke. This is the human, someone muttered. The one who fed the outsiders. Others hissed. Lawbreaker, traitor. But there were also quiet voices of doubt, voices that asked, he fed starving children. Is that truly a crime? The overseers forced Daniel to his knees before the plaza, their metallic voices booming. This human is guilty of breaking Galactic Law, Article 77. He gave food to outsiders. He disrupted the balance. He defied the rules that protect all. The crowd murmured, some nodding in fear, others looking uneasy. Daniel raised his head, his eyes steady, his voice calm but strong. If the law says children must starve, then the law is wrong. Gasps rippled through the crowd. The overseer struck him across the face, but he did not lower his gaze. Blood dripped from his lip, yet his voice carried louder. You call it balance, but I call it cruelty. You hide behind rules while children waste away in silence. He turned his eyes toward the crowd, his words striking like lightning. If feeding the hungry makes me a criminal, then let every human be guilty. The plaza went still. For a long moment, no one moved. The overseers roared, ordering silence, but whispers grew anyway. Whispers of defiance, whispers of doubt. Daniel's words spread faster than the overseers could silence them. That night, even as he was thrown into a cold prison cell, the story of the human who stood against the law traveled across the station. Merchants repeated it in secret, workers carried it to the docks, and even travelers leaving the station took the tale with them to distant worlds. Meanwhile, in the silent colony, Sarah and Lyra could not sleep. Lyra cried into her sister's arms. They took him. They will kill him. Sarah held her tighter, her heart breaking, yet deep inside she felt something she had never felt before. Hope. For Daniel had shown them that even against the law, even against the overseers, one voice could matter. Days passed, but the overseers could not stop the story. In the market halls, humans from O. Their ships began leaving small packets of food in hidden corners. They did not speak, they did not announce themselves, but they acted one by one. Quiet acts of defiance grew. The overseers called them traitors, but the people called it kindness. In his prison cell, Daniel sat chained, bruised and tired, but his spirit unbroken. When guards passed, he did not beg, he did not plead, he simply said, "Children are starving below your feet. You can chain me, but you cannot chain the truth." Some guards spat at him, others turned away, but a few lowered their heads, unable to meet his gaze. One evening, the overseers dragged him out again, this time to face judgment. The plaza was packed with thousands, the air heavy with tension. The lead overseer raised his voice. This human has broken the law. His punishment will be severe, so all may learn. Kindness will not be tolerated. Daniel raised his head, his voice steady. You cannot kill kindness. It will spread. It already has. And he was right. From the back of the crowd, a human traitor stepped forward, holding up a small pack of bread. I am guilty too, the man said, for I fed a child. Gasps erupted. Then another voice joined, a woman holding a flask of water. I am guilty, she said firmly, for I gave drink to the thirsty. Then another and another, until dozens of humans stepped forward, each holding food, water, or supplies. The overseers shouted for silence, their weapons glowing, But the crowd only grew louder. Even some non-human merchants raised their hands, shaking but determined. "We are guilty," they said together. "If kindness is a crime, then we are guilty." The plaza shook with the sound of voices. The overseers froze, overwhelmed by the defiance. Daniel stood tall, chains rattling, his heart swelling with pride. This was no longer about him. This was about humanity, about what it meant to be human. He shouted over the noise, his voice carrying like thunder. "Remember this day, not for me, but for every child who begged for bread. Remember that humanity is dangerous, not because of weapons, not because of power, but because we refuse to stop caring." The overseers surged forward, trying to silence the crowd, but the spark had already turned into fire. The people shouted louder. Children clung to their mothers with hope in their eyes, and Sarah and Lyra, hidden in the crowd, whispered Daniel's name with trembling smiles. The law had tried to crush him, but instead, it had unleashed something far greater, humanity's defiance. The plaza was still shaking with voices when Daniel was dragged back into the prison. Chains bit into his wrists, his body ached, but his heart carried fire. He had seen it, he had heard it. Humanity had stood up, and kindness had refused to die. The overseers tried to silence the rebellion with fear. They shouted threats, waved their weapons, and arrested anyone too bold, but the spark had already spread. People whispered Daniel's words in dark corridors. "If feeding the hungry is a crime, then let us all be guilty." The silent colony heard the whispers too. Sarah and Lyra clung to their mother as the words traveled through the tunnels. For the first time in years, the silence of their world cracked. Children spoke softly of hope. Mothers smiled faintly through their pain, and the name of the human who had defied the law became a song on their lips. In his cell, Daniel sat on the cold floor, his back against the wall. He knew his trial would come soon, and he knew the overseers would not forgive. But he also knew it no longer mattered, because even if they broke his body, his choice had already changed something greater. The trial came quickly. The court chamber was vast, with shining pillars and cold metallic walls. At the center stood Daniel, still chained, facing a council of overseers. Their visors glowing like fire, crowds filled the seats, humans, aliens, merchants, even guards who dared to listen. The lead overseer's voice thundered, "Human Daniel, you are charged with breaking Galactic Law, Article 77. You gave food to outsiders, you disrupted balance, you inspired rebellion. How do you plead?" Daniel raised his head, his voice calm. "Guilty," he said, "but guilty of compassion, guilty of humanity." Gasps rippled through the chamber. The overseer's tone grew harsher. "Do you understand the punishment? Death, exile, erasure." Daniel's voice rang louder. "If death is the price of kindness, then I accept it, but you will never erase what has already begun." The chamber filled with murmurs. Some aliens lowered their heads, ashamed. Others clenched their fists with hidden courage. The overseers pounded their staffs for silence, but silence no longer belonged to them. Far beneath the court, in the silent colony, Sarah's mother spoke to her daughters with a trembling smile. "Remember him, no matter what they do. Remember the human who gave you food when no one else dared." Lyra's small voice whispered, "He is not just human, he is hope." The verdict was swift. "Daniel of Earth, you are guilty, and by law you will be erased," the overseer declared coldly. The crowd gasped, chains rattled, guards stepped forward, but Daniel stood tall, his eyes steady. "I may vanish, but the idea will not. You cannot erase hunger, and you cannot erase kindness." And he was right. Outside the court, humans and even other species began to act. Small food packs appeared in corners of the trade halls. Hidden water flasks were left in tunnels. The overseers tried to stop them, but for every act they punished, two more appeared. Kindness had become rebellion, and rebellion had become unstoppable. Word of Daniel's trial spread beyond the station. Ships carried the story to distant systems. On one world, a human miner gave food to alien workers and said, "For Daniel." On another, a merch. Ants shared water and whispered, "For the children." The name of the human who fed starving aliens became a legend. In the silent colony, Sarah and Lyra waited each day, hoping Daniel might return. He never did, but they carried his gift in their hearts. Lyra grew stronger, her smile brighter. Sarah learned to speak louder, to guide others. The silent colony was no longer silent. Years later, children who once starved told stories of the day a human chose to break the law. They remembered his words, his defiance, his kindness. And across the galaxy, the story was told and retold, not of a warrior with weapons, not of a conqueror with power, but of a traveler who shared his meal. The overseers had sought to erase him, But instead, they carved his name into history, for in the end, Daniel proved that humanity's true danger was never in strength or machines. It was in compassion. Compassion that could not be silenced. Compassion that could ignite entire worlds. And so the legend lived on, the tale of the human who heard two alien girls beg, "Can we have your leftovers?" And instead of turning away, he fed them. And in doing so, he fed something far greater. He fed hope.